the entry-level Harley-Davidson, which has proved to be one of their best-selling motorcycles, the Street 500, up against Honda's sleek and sporty little beginner cruiser, the Rebel 500. If you're looking at getting your first motorcycle and aren't interested in sport or naked bikes, then you'll probably land amongst these two, and for good reason. Hi, I'm Kwackajack, and thanks for joining along for another video in the Versus series. Today we are putting two of the most popular learner-approved cruiser motorcycles head-to-head in a direct specs comparison. I'm also fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to do a first ride review of the Street 500, which you can find on the channel. But today, it has some tough competition as we compare the claimed engine and power stats, exhaust sounds, weight, suspension and brakes, features and price against the Honda Rebel 500. But before we get started, please make sure to give this video a like, hit subscribe to join our fast-growing motorcycle loving family, and let me know which of these two machines you prefer. Alright, let's get straight into it. First of all, let's get a good look at the styling of both of these bikes. I'll throw up some photos of each now so you can decide which styling you prefer. I like the look of both bikes, even though they are quite different. The Harley is a more traditional cruiser shape, and the model that I rode had a really great matte black finish on it. I believe that the Street 500 is a lot better looking in person than it is in photos as well. The Rebel 500 is more minimalist and sleek, and is reminiscent in shape of a Harley-Davidson Sportster. But it all comes down to personal opinion, so which bike do you think looks better? Moving on to engines and power. Both of these motorcycles are learner approved and fit into the entry-level category for cruisers. And while they both feature similar engine sizes, the actual setups are very different. The Harley-Davidson Street 500 features a 494cc liquid-cooled Revolution X V-twin, which pushes out a claimed 40 Nm of torque at 3,750 RPM. It's actually pretty difficult to find reliable horsepower numbers for the Street 500, but dyno runs on YouTube show it making 29.5 horses. Again, the acceleration stats are also elusive, but you can expect the top speed to be around 150 km an hour, and in my experience, the 0 to 100 time was around 7 seconds. The Street 500 makes a lot of its grunt very low in the rev range, which is fun to use on the roads, but after around 120 km an hour, the power really does start to cut out. The Honda Rebel 500 on the other hand has a 471cc liquid-cooled parallel twin 4-stroke taken from the CB500, but retuned for more lower-end torque. It produces a much higher 45 horsepower at 8,500 RPM, and dyno runs show it making 43.5 Nm of torque at 6,000 RPM. That means that the Rebel has a 0 to 100 time of just under 6 seconds and a top speed of around 160 km an hour, with claims of it reaching close to 170. So, when it comes to engine specs, the Honda clearly takes the win with its parallel twin producing much more horsepower and a few more Nm of torque than the Harley. In my experience, the Street 500 was a lot of fun in the 0 to 80 range, which is fine for the streets, but the Honda is clearly the faster motorcycle. Now let's have a quick listen to the stock exhaust of the two. Moving on to weight, and again, these two bikes have a very big gap between them. The Harley has a wet weight of 233 kilograms. Now, for a Harley-Davidson that's quite light, but for a motorcycle in general, it's heavy. Thankfully, once you're moving on the street, that weight isn't as noticeable. But there is no denying that the Honda is a lot lighter, coming in at 185 kilograms wet and a whole 48 kilograms lighter than the Harley-Davidson. This is mainly due to the different styles of the bike, with the Honda being a more sleek design and featuring a diamond-type steel tube frame, whereas the Harley is a lot larger overall and has that big lumpy V-twin. For weight, the Honda takes the win. Now moving on to suspension and brakes. On the Harley at the front, it has got a 37mm telescopic fork and twin externally mounted tubular shocks with adjustable preload at the rear. Harley-Davidson marketed this bike as a beginner bike for riders who are looking to build their confidence, as well as a quick and nimble little motorcycle. I can vouch that the handling on the Street 500 is surprisingly agile, with it being quick to turn in and feeling very light when moving. It's also a very comfortable bike, with the seat being plush compared to the regular sport bikes that my butt's usually riding on, and absorbing a vast majority of bumps with ease. In terms of handling, the Street 500 will be better than expected and can be a lot of fun. As for the brakes, it has a single 300mm disc with 2-piston floating caliper at both the front and the back, and ABS is optional. The brakes on the bike were good, but nothing special. I did appreciate having a large rear tyre brake though, again coming from a sport bike where usually the rear disc is a lot smaller than the front. As for the Rebel 500, for its suspension up front, it is rocking a 41mm fork with 4.8 inches of travel and spring preload adjustable shocks at the back. As for its brakes, it's got a Nissan hydraulic 296mm disc at the front and Nissan hydraulic 240mm disc at the rear. ABS is also an option on the Rebel. As for which bike handles and brakes better, it's really down to personal opinion and there is no clear winner. You will, however, be getting a comfortable ride on either bike as they both have quite low seat heights and upright body positions to make it easy to reach the floor and go for longer rides. Now onto the features. These are both beginner bikes and as such are relatively cheap compared to others. That in turn means that the list of features that you get is not a long one. Both Honda and Harley offer a range of accessories to add onto the bike, but stock, you're going to be running bare bones. On the Street 500, the features include an analog speedo with small 3.5-inch electronic screen, a nice paint job, comfortable seat, keyless fob, and security system with siren. Really, for the price that you pay for the Harley, I'd expect a few more features. I really wasn't impressed with the tiny electronic screen that would show hardly any information. I mean, there isn't even a fuel gauge, and the gear indicator would only work when you're moving and over a certain amount of revs, so when coming to a halt, you'd have to search around for first. I guess these are the compromises that you find yourself having to deal with to have a part of the Harley-Davidson legacy though. The Honda is better equipped, with its features being LCD display with fuel gauge, gear indicator and fuel consumption, full LEDs, assist and slipper clutch, aluminium rear subframe and optional or removable rear seat. The Harley also has a 13-litre fuel tank with an average consumption of 5.7 litres per 100 Ks and a range of around 230 kilometers. Whereas the Honda has an even smaller 11.2 litre tank, but it does have a really good 3.5 litre per 100 kilometer usage, so you should be reaching around 300 kilometers per tank. When it comes to features, the Honda wins again. It's a similar story when it comes to the price. Here in Australia, the price of a new Harley-Davidson Street 500 started at $9,995, compared to the Honda Rebel 500 starting price, which was only $6,299. So you'll be paying over $3,500 more to get the Harley. Look, on paper, there has never been a more clear winner between the two bikes in question than in this comparison. The Honda has more power, is lighter, is well styled, better equipped, and cheaper. But it isn't a Harley-Davidson. I don't think that anybody specifically buys a Harley for the purpose of having the best bike around. They buy it because of the name, the culture, and the community that the bike grants you. No other manufacturer has got the same fan base as Harley-Davidson, and it's hard to argue with how well loved and appreciated the brand has become. So yes, while the Honda is the better bike, if you tell someone you have a Honda, you won't get the same admiration and response as if you say you own a Harley-Davidson. So in that respect, the Street 500 is the smallest and cheapest way to grab a bit of that heritage that comes along with the Harley name. Unfortunately, they have stopped the production of the Street 500 and the smallest in the range will now be the Iron 883 going forward. However, the Street 500 is still a fun little bike and has enough power to put a smile on your face. But there you have it, the Harley-Davidson Street 500 against the Honda Rebel 500. Which one would you have? Would you have the better on paper Rebel? Or would you go down the road of heritage and own the one with the brand behind it? If you're interested in my first ride review of the Street 500, I'll leave a link in the description. So let me know which one you guys prefer, and while you're down there, make sure to give this video a like and let me know which two motorcycles you'd like to see go head to head next. If I use it, I'll make sure to give you a shout out in the video. Thanks again for watching guys, and until next time, see ya!